Hey guys, I'm back again, and this time we are going to talk about cellular respiration. Alright, so this is the process by which our body makes high energy molecule called ATP. Alright, let's look at the overall chemical reaction. Now first and foremost you need to understand is that the body can use any simple molecule, and you can break down this molecule, and you can break down a simple molecule, whether it's an amino acid, whether it is a fatty acid, it can be a carbohydrate, anything can be broken down to form ATP or energy. But the body by default uses glucose. Okay, so we are going to talk about glucose today. So here the overall chemical process for a cellular respiration, we are going to take one molecule of glucose, and to that we are going to add 6 molecules of oxygen. It produces 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of water, and usable energy, and this energy is in the form of ATP. Alright, so this is the overall reaction. Now obviously you are understanding that this reaction, right away you can see that it is a catabolic process. What is catabolic process? Well, catabolic process means we are breaking it down, right? We are breaking a big molecule to form small molecules. That's a catabolic process. It is also an exothermic reaction. Why? Because we are producing heat. Last but not the least, I'm going to use another word. It's a redox reaction. There is reduction and oxidation. Remember, reduction means the addition. This means an addition of an electron. And oxidation means loss of an electron. Okay? So another thing that I'd like to point out, that this is basically a combustion reaction. Like combustion, it is like burning. But here the cell is so clever. The way it produces ATP is in very, very small series of reactions ATP is produced. So you don't end up burning the cell. All right, but basically this reaction is that of a combustion, where you're using when you are breaking down a organic molecule or a molecule in the presence of oxygen to produce heat or energy. All right, so now let's see the 4 stages. All right, there are 4 stages that we will talk about: glycolysis, transition reaction, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain. In each step you will notice that ATP is being produced. Now more ATP is produced in some steps and less, but basically this is the overall reaction. Let's go ahead and see the first step, that's glycolysis. Glycolysis comes from the word glucose lysis, breakdown of glucose. So basically we are taking 6 carbon glucose and we are investing 2 molecules of ATP. Then we are harvesting and basically end up with 4 molecules of ATP and 2 molecules of a 3 carbon pyruvic acid. So your 6 carbon molecule is now broken up into 2 3 carbon molecules, that's the pyruvic acid. In this process also high energy containing electrons are produced, which is now taken up by coenzyme. This is an NAD. So it's taken up by coenzyme and you end up with NADH. This is a reduced coenzyme. Remember, addition of an electron is reduction. This is a reduced coenzyme, and this is the NADH. So the overall reaction is that we are producing 2 molecules of ATP, 2 molecules of pyruvate, and also 2 molecules of NADH. Now basically you need to understand that glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm. It does not need oxygen. So if there is oxygen, fine, but it does not use oxygen. So this is an anaerobic step of It does not need oxygen, okay? So it's an anaerobic step. And here it's a very simple, very quick, very fast way of getting, and fast way of the cell getting ATP. All right, now here the next step I need to show you that glycolysis is taking place here in the cytoplasm. The next set of steps, the substrate, the molecules have to go into the mitochondria, because that's where the enzymes are for the next set of steps. So glycolysis in the cytoplasm, if there is, you end up with pyruvate. If you have oxygen, well, we are going to go into the mitochondria and the next set of steps takes place. If you do not have oxygen, you will enter another set of reaction called fermentation, and we'll talk about that later. Even before we go on, let's see the parts of a mitochondria. So mitochondria, there are two membranes, the outer membrane, the inner membrane. So obviously you have the outer space, which is called the intermembrane space between the outer and the inner membrane. And of course here is the matrix that is in the inner compartment. Now the inner membrane is highly folded and you get these finger-like projections. These finger-like projections are called the cristae. So now let's see the next step. That's the transition reaction. Transition reaction means change. The word transition means change. Well, what are we changing? Once in the presence of oxygen, pyruvic acid enters mitochondria, and in the matrix, well, let's see what happens. It takes up coenzyme A and becomes a 2-carbon acetyl-CoA. But in that process, 1 carbon dioxide is given off because 3 minus 2 is 1. So you end up giving out 1 molecule of carbon dioxide. But at the same time, you are also giving up high energy electrons. These high energy electrons accepted by NAD to form NADH. All right. So let's see now the next set of reaction. The next set of reaction is a Krebs cycle. So the acetyl coenzyme A, now again we're still in the matrix of the mitochondria. It is accepted by oxaloacetic acid, and the first product is citric acid. So the citric acid now breaks down to give you back your oxaloacetic acid. But in this process, the acetyl-CoA, which came in with 2 carbons, is given out, is totally broken. The bonds are broken. So you'll end up with 2 molecules of carbon dioxide. But all that energy that's released is taken up, is released in the form of high energy containing electrons, which are taken up by these coenzymes like NAD to form reduced coenzyme NADH. So you end up with 3 molecules of NADH, 1, 2, and 3. Another reduced coenzyme you'll see is FADH2, which again takes up a high energy electron, and also an ATP. So per pyruvate that enters the Krebs cycle, you're ending up with 3 NADH, 1 FADH2, and 1 ATP molecule. The product is, of course, carbon dioxide as well as ATP, the side products, okay? Well, the next, now what do you do with all these reduced coenzymes? Remember we produced NADH and we produced FADH2. So what are you going to do with these reduced coenzymes? Now these reduced coenzymes in the cristae, remember all this while we were in the matrix. Now the electron transport chain is in the cristae. So these are the folds, the finger-like folds of the inner membrane of the mitochondria. So here in the inner membrane are these protein carriers, and these bunch of protein carriers, what they're going to do is they are going to take up the electron from NADH and they're going to pass it down. As they're passing the high energy electron, every step of the way the electron will lose energy. So let's look at this one. It is going to accept the electron, lose the electron, to the second one, which is going to accept the electron, lose the electron. But with every step of the way, the electron is losing energy. And finally, after it is done with the last electron carrier in the membrane, it is taken up by the last electron acceptor, which is oxygen. So oxygen takes up this electron along with your hydrogen to form water. So the product of this electron transport chain, one of the products, is water. So when it is losing, this electron is losing energy. Well, what does it do with that energy? It uses that energy to pump hydrogen out. Hydrogen out where? In the outer membrane, right here in between the outer and the inner membrane is the inner membrane space, the intermembrane space here, which is also called the outer chamber of the mitochondria. Hydrogen is pumped out. So you will see a whole bunch of hydrogen that accumulate in the intermembrane space. Okay, now all the hydrogen go through, there's only one way to go through. It's this molecule called the ATP synthase. And as the hydrogen pass through the ATP synthase, there is a motor in here, and this motor twists, turns. In the process, ADP is converted into ATP. So once again, as the electron is passing down the electron transport chain, which are a bunch of protein molecules, the electron loses energy, which is used to pump hydrogen outside. The hydrogen accumulates in the outer intermembrane space of the mitochondria. All the hydrogen finally gush through a channel through a certain protein, which is the ATP synthase. As the hydrogen gush through, the motor-like ATP synthase twists, and that energy is used to convert ADP into ATP. All right? So here, in summary, we have glycolysis, we have transition reaction, Krebs cycle here, and finally electron transport chain. So if we see how many of ATP is being produced in glycolysis, 2 molecules of ATP are produced. In the transition reaction out here, again what happens is ATP is produced, we have 2 molecules of ATP produced, and finally in the electron transport chain, we have 32 molecules of ATP. So obviously maximum amount of energy is ATP is being produced during the electron transport chain reaction. All right. So the process by which the ATP is produced here in the electron transport chain reaction is called oxidative phosphorylation. Why? And this is because what happens is, if you remember, NADH is losing its electron and it is taken up by oxygen. So it's oxidative process. Remember, loss of electron is oxidation. And in that process, you are producing what? You are producing ATP. So this is just the same thing that's repeated. Finally, you're noticing that a lot of textbook will say that you're ending up with 36 molecules of ATP, but that's actually never true. And the reason being that there are a lot of, this is the best case scenario. Best case scenario never exists. There are leaky membranes, etc. So you end up with anything between 29 to about 30 molecules of ATP. So I think this is all I have for you. I wanted to also quickly mention that if there is no oxygen, then you end up with something called anaerobic respiration, which anaerobic does not require oxygen. Aerobic requires oxygen. It is very simple, it's very fast, but produces small amounts of ATP. Whereas with aerobic respiration, which requires oxygen, you'll end up with a large amount of ATP, and that's why we are aerobes, because we use oxygen. I hope this has been helpful for you, and if there are any questions or concerns, please stop by my office and talk to me. Thank you.